Welcome back. Well, the U.S. is now starting to organize charter flights and other transportations for Americans to leave Israel beginning today. This is nearly a week after the Israeli-Hamas war began. Reuters is reporting that Americans will be, quote, asked to sign an agreement to repay the U.S. government prior to departure and should be prepared to arrange their own lodging and onward travel from Greece, Germany, or Cyprus to their final destination. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is also signing an executive order today to authorize the state's Division of Emergency Management to begin working to bring Floridians stuck in Israel back home to Florida. Joining me right now is Florida Senator, Senate Select Committee on Intelligence Vice Chairman, and Senate Foreign Relations Committee member Marco Rubio. Senator, it's so good to talk with you this morning. Thanks very much for your leadership. Assess the situation for us, please.
Well, the situation in Israel is as follows. They are right on their border in a territory there called Gaza, a bunch of fanatical savages the reason why they exist is to destroy the state of Israel, drive every Jew out of the Middle East, has just butchered and massacred babies and teenage girls and innocent civilians. They can no longer coexist. I argue they never could, despite some of the so-called experts around here saying that Hamas is a group you can work with. By the way, including the guy in charge of dealing with the Iranians under the Biden administration, who's now being investigated for all kinds of crimes involving classified information and sharing it. This guy was one of the guys arguing that. So what happens? Israel can't coexist with these guys. This group has to be destroyed. But this group follows the same playbook. This is a playbook they've played over and over again. Not just them, by the way, Hezbollah and others. Okay, they attack Israel, they kill a bunch of Jews, then they take off running and they go hide in Gaza, for example, and they hide behind civilians. Israel responds. Civilians, unfortunately, die because the Hamas uses them as shields. They then go run to the global press and they say, look what Israel's doing, look how terrible this is, and then everyone puts pressure on Israel to stop before the job is done. And then what happens? Those guys survive and they come back and they kill more Jews in Israel. And that plays out over and over and over again. That's their playbook. They've done it over and over again, and this time has to be different. These guys cannot be allowed, this terrorist organization cannot be allowed to continue as a viable entity. These are the guys who want their own country. Hamas's position is basically, we want to govern not just Gaza, we want you to give us our own country. I imagine, presumably, from which they can then kill even more Jews. This is an unacceptable situation. Israel has no choice but to wipe them out, and we have no choice but to do everything we can to help Israel by providing them the material they need to finish the job.
Well, I know that you, at one point, are going to be looking back to see how, in fact, we got here. But it seems to me the policies coming out of this administration have been such appeasement to Iran. And you just mentioned this chief negotiator in the administration. You're talking about Robert Malley, Biden's chief negotiator in the Iran nuclear talks. He apparently facilitated the penetration of an Iranian spy ring into the highest national security levels of the government. Can you tell us more about this, and how is it possible that this was the person that was negotiating an Iran deal?
Well, first of all, this is the person that everybody called an expert on the Middle East, an expert on Israeli-Palestinian affairs, an expert on Iran. In fact, he was working on the Obama campaign. I don't recall if it was 2012 or 2008, and the Obama campaign had to let him go because he was caught coordinating with some of these groups in the middle of the campaign. And then they brought him into the National Security Council. And then this guy has an extensive record of writings in which he basically argues that we should be at the table, that Hamas is a responsible actor, that they actually need to be a part of the solution, that they should be talked to. I mean, he has a long record of this. They put him in charge of the Iran negotiations, a guy who has clear sympathies for the Iranian regime and who, beyond that, which is annoying and dangerous, the bigger challenge here is, and the influence operation that I have no doubt he was a part of in terms of influencing our policy and the way we talked about Iran. Okay, this is a guy who's potentially sharing information with them. And then how misguided. But his viewpoint, you will find it all over. You go out and go find experts anywhere, the Council of Foreign Relations, at any of these other institutions out there that have been corrupted, and it is filled with experts who do not understand that Iran is not Belgium, that Hamas is not Luxembourg. We are dealing with people whose value system tells them that life has no value, that it is okay to die, that is a form of worship if you die in the name of jihad. In fact, they view it as heroic for their children to be killed as martyrs. They do not value life. They are willing to kill innocents, and their goal is pretty simple. They want every Jew out of the Middle East either dead or gone. That is the stated purpose of Hamas. And we have this problem. We Westerners have a problem. We don't believe these people when they say this stuff. We just think it's propaganda and talking points. We don't believe they actually mean it. And in the case of Iran, they're trying to acquire nuclear weapons. What do we think they're going to do with those weapons? They will use them to commit these sorts of atrocities.
And yet this administration has been trying to get an Iran deal done, trying to negotiate with the Iranians since day one, since Joe Biden walked into the Oval Office. I want to get your take on the other players here, the Qataris, the Chinese, because we're told that the U.S. and Qatar have reached an agreement to block Iran from accessing that $6 billion in funds that were part of the prisoner swap that Joe Biden unfroze for the Iranians just last month. Before this, are the Qataris complicit? Do you believe that, in fact, that money is refrozen again?
Well, I don't know if it's been refrozen. I've seen the reports on it. Look, the Qataris are complicated. As it's a complicated situation, as much as in that part of the world. It's a small kingdom with a lot of money. And how do they punch above their weight is they have influence. A long time ago, I believe they made the decision that having some relationship with Hamas made them a player in the region, gave them some influence. They had this love-hate relationship with Hamas. They send them money. They cut their money off when they don't do what they want. They also, by the way, operate Al Jazeera, which is incredibly influential in the Middle East. And on the one hand, I think the Qataris probably do not want to see a regional war because it's destabilizing to them and everything else. On the other hand, they have this long-standing relationship with different groups like this because it gives them influence in the region. And it creates all kinds of friction within the kingdoms, the different Gulf kingdoms involved. So it's a complex situation involved there. Unfortunately, I think they should re-examine all of this. I really don't think that groups like Hamas should be anybody's proxy or should be anybody's agents of influence. These groups can't be dealt with. They have just showed us who the Israelis have known they are, and many of us have known they are for a very long time. They have demonstrated it to the world. These groups have to be eliminated.
And then there's China, Senator. Former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo joined me this week on this. Here's what he said about China. Watch this.
We shouldn't think for a moment that Iran doesn't work alongside the Chinese Communist Party. You'll remember it's now been a year and a half or 2 years, signed a 25-year weapons deal between China and Iran. No, they are firm partners, this axis, right? I'll give you another example from just recently. The UN Security Council, China and Russia, blocked any response, any just simple statement about the grotesque terror attack inside of Israel. No, the Chinese and the Russians see this as a chance to distract the West, to undermine what we had begun to build out in the Middle East, relationships between the United States and the Gulf Arab states. The administration has played fast and loose with American money to the harm of the American economy with the Chinese Communist Party.
So what about that, Senator? Is China supporting Hamas or China supporting Iran as Iran supports Hamas? I want to get your take here because just yesterday, the Coalition for a Prosperous America out with a report on how Vanguard and the FT Russell groups are sending money by investors in the U.S. to fund China. Is that ultimately funding this war?
Oh, indirectly, absolutely. I would tell you a couple things about China. The first thing they care about, because they're not like our leaders that are stupid, they want the oil. They understand that oil is critical. They may put out statements about global warming and climate change and clean energy, but they want oil. They have the world's largest surplus of refining capacity, and so they don't want to see anything that disrupts the oil supplies in the world because it hurts their economy. The second thing they want is anything that drains America, costs America money, or distracts America. And so in their view, for very little investment, any sort of disruption there that focuses our attention on there instead of Taiwan and things of that nature is positive. And so that's why I think you see the Chinese take the position that they have and have relationship that they have with Iran. In essence, they believe they want to overtake America as the world's great power. They view Iran as an irritant to the United States and a place that we have to focus on. And so the more Iran has power, the more Iran has influence, the more Iran can be a player at our detriment, the better it is for China. And I think you'll continue to see them take this position, as the Russians have as well. But the Chinese obviously have a lot more power and influence at this point than the Russians do. So I think, to build on what Pompeo just said in that clip, absolutely China is a part of this broader alliance or axis of anti-American, anti-Western interests in the world who view every opportunity as an opportunity to harm America, harm our allies, and strengthen themselves in the process.
How would you assess the U.S.'s response to this, Senator? What should we be doing now that we know that there are 150 hostages? And I'm reading today that the charter flights are just beginning now to get people out of Israel, to get Americans out of Israel. This is a week after this started. I know next week there will be a hearing in the Senate to nominate Jack Lew as ambassador to Israel. Can you tell us about that and about the U.S.'s response? What do they need to do now?
Well, I would say I think we should have an ambassador in every country. It has to be the right person. In the case of Mr. Lew, I have real concerns that he has misled and lied to Congress in the past in terms of some of the financial arrangements that were made under the Obama administration. And that's a valid situation to ask. That's something that needs to be asked. And the Republicans haven't been blocking his nomination. He just got nominated. The paperwork on his nomination arrived literally a week ago today here in the Senate. So it would have been impossible to confirm him or anybody else. We'll go through those hearings. We'll go through that process. On the broader point of how, look, I always want Israel to be a bipartisan issue. I really do. I think the strength of that is that it's bipartisan. And so I want it to remain bipartisan. I will say that I have some concerns about how the Biden administration has responded to this. But I do think, for example, the sending of the carrier group, it's a positive step forward. They've said all the right things publicly at this point. So we'll continue to try to make this as bipartisan as possible, and hopefully it will remain that way. But this is a very serious and delicate and dangerous situation, but an important one for the United States.
How long are you expecting this war to go on, Senator?
Who knows? It won't be easy. Look, going on the ground, these guys will become insurgents. They have tunnel systems. They've created defensive mechanisms, and they're hiding behind civilians. But what we can't allow here is a couple weeks from now, everybody's sympathy for Israel goes away, and it all becomes about how Israel has to stop. If they don't finish the job, this group's going to come back and kill many more Israelis, many more Jews in the months and years to come.
But do you have confidence that Israel can, in fact, wipe out Hamas?
I have confidence that they can degrade Hamas to the point where they can never do what they did the other day again. At the end of the day, Hamas can no longer be in charge of anything. Not Gaza, not anything.
Senator, thank you very much for being here this morning. We so appreciate your time.